Welcome back. In 1972, Ugandan dictator Idi Amin expelled 80,000 Asians of Indian descent from the East African nation. Over 6,000 of them came to Canada, including the parents of CTV's chief news anchor, Omar Sachedina.
Alongside his mother and sister, Omar recently returned to Uganda. It was his mother, Salma's very first visit since her expulsion. Their journey is the subject of the CTV News special, Expelled, My Roots in Uganda. Take a look.
After telling other people's stories for 15 years, I want to be able to have some part in telling my own. And an important part of that is to be able to go to my mom's homeland and experience her return for the first time in 50 years.
Please welcome to the show, Omar and Salma Sachedina.
It's really captivating to watch this, and I mean, I'm ashamed to admit I'm one of the many Canadians, I think, out there who was only vaguely aware of this story. So talk about, Omar, share with people, for those who are unfamiliar with this, what happened in Uganda in 1972?
And Cynthia, you're not alone. A lot of people are unfamiliar with this history. In 1972, on August 4th, Idi Amin gave Indians, Asians, 90 days to leave the country, so 3 months. And my mom was, you were 19
I was 19 at the time,
19,
yes.
And imagine that. I mean, you have to literally pick up your whole life. You don't even know which country you're going to. And he gave them 90 days to leave. Now, she was born in that country. My grandparents were born in that country. And so this was their home. This was the land of their birth. And they just had to uproot and leave. So immensely traumatizing, a horrifying moment in history, but I think one that if you were to look back, you would probably call a blessing in disguise.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
Salma, there's a powerful scene where we see you return to Uganda after 50 years.
Yes.
What did that moment feel like for you?
Oh my goodness. As soon as I got off the plane and at the airport, I just could not recognize anything at all. And I said to Omar, I said, Omar asked me, so do you recognize anything? And I said, no, I don't recognize anything at all. Then as I came out, I could smell the air, and that was the only thing I could, that was familiar to me, that yes, this is Uganda. But yeah, everything was changed. I could not see anything that was familiar at all.
Wow. I think what we definitely share, Omar, is an appreciation for our parents' immigrant experience. And there's actually a quote in your piece, and you say, as children, we think we know our parents, but when we see where they grew up, how they grew up, that's when we really understand and truly appreciate them. Was that the motivation behind deciding to do this project?
There's a huge part of that. Sometimes perhaps selfishly, we forget that our parents had entire lives that pre-existed our own. And as I was going through the family album, you were wearing bell-bottoms at some point. I was like, oh, wait, she had so much style. She still does have a lot of style, but it was a different style, And it was just sort of, acquainting myself with the mom that was before I came into this world was a tremendously fascinating experience. I mean, I feel like I have known her my entire life, but there's a part of her that I didn't know. And so the journey was very much about, getting in touch with that. And I think I got the deepest understanding ever of the power, the resilience, the strength, the determination, the tenacity with which she has lived her life. This was a tremendously difficult experience for her personally. She's not only surmounted, but she's kept all of her humanity. She's kept all of her compassion. She's kept all of her kindness. And I think that is a big message, right? A lot of people endure the most difficult of circumstances, but they become embittered as a result. They close in. She has gone the opposite direction. And I think that's a lesson for me, and I think it's a lesson for everybody.
Absolutely. There's a really great behind-the-scenes photo that I know you posted on Instagram, so I want us to take a look at it. Can you tell us what's actually happening here? What are you looking at?
So
Salma, maybe, or either one of you.
You go for it.
Oh, okay. So this is Nabusanke. And we were trying to figure out where was my home, and we were lost totally because everything had changed. Yeah. We just could not recognize anything at all. So we thought, okay, let's pick up a phone and phone my mother, Omar's grandma, who lives in London, England. And of course, I mean, she confused us even more because she said, oh, can you take a look near our house? There was this tree with mangoes and there's another tree with black plums. And I said, but Ma, there's nothing up here at all. There are no trees, there's nothing at all. So that wasn't much help to us.
So there's a sweltering midday sun because we're on the equator. And she's like, Omar, there's a mango tree. And then there's this tree and that tree. I'm like, Nanima, there is no tree, like it's all gone. And it was interesting hearing just her voice as well, because she sort of was surprised and perhaps a little bit dejected because, you know, when we leave these places, I think we remember the best of the times, right? We remember the fruit and the climate and how great life was and family and everything. We sort of leave the traumatic parts of it aside because that's the way we all cope. So for her to confront that, for my mom to confront that, it was a very, you know, it was tough to watch because it's so painful for them. But it was also fascinating from the journalist perspective and putting that cap on.
Well, I want to go further into that, Omar, because you experienced this as Salma's son, but you were also on assignment as a journalist. For example, while there's no possible rationale for what happened, you do attempt to understand the circumstances surrounding, you know, the history of the place and what was going on at the time. So how was it for you to strike that balance between being your mom's son and a reporter?
It's a great question because you had to dip in and you had to dip out, right? And you had to dip in order to feel and to try to come to terms with that history on a personal level. From a journalistic level, look, I mean, we are having some immensely difficult conversations in this country about reconciliation, coming to terms with our past, how to move forward, the conversations around colonialism. We know that Uganda was a British colony, and the British had created a system, a hierarchical system, where the British used the Indians to fulfill their objectives, and the Indians used the blacks to fulfill their objectives. And it was a system that they created, and that's a perspective that I wanted to learn more about or become more acquainted to. And we spoke to locals and we talked about that. And I think the prevailing sentiment at that time, and this is something my parents have always been very honest with me about as well in our own conversations at home. The prevailing sentiment of that time was that there was, to a large degree, a somewhat exploitative relationship, right? Where blacks were used as cheap labor, even though there are lots of examples of Indian generosity as well. So like you said, there's never under any circumstance an excuse to expel an entire population based on their race or ethnicity. But it did give the seeds to Idi Amin to use that populist sentiment, not only to come into power and say, you know, if you stand by me, if you support me, I'll give Ugandans back to the blacks, you know, because he did notice that power imbalance. So that was something that I got a deeper appreciation of with this journey. And I think it's important for all of us to confront our past and have those honest discussions. And we all become stronger as a result.
Yeah. It really is such a moving special. Salma, what do you hope people will take away from it?
Well, you know, this is not only my story. It is the story of thousands and thousands of immigrants. And I'm hoping that they can relate at some level, at some point, to this story. And I personally feel totally blessed and grateful for, you know, having come to this wonderful, wonderful country. It has offered me so much for my life as well as my children's life. So I do really appreciate that very much.
And one of the things I love that she said during this documentary is that she said, Omar, 50 years ago, I was kicked out of this country, but now I'm going and I'm leaving on my own terms this time. Nobody's kicking me out. I'm going back on my own terms.
Thank you both so much for being here and for sharing your story. Expelled, My Roots in Uganda airs this Friday, November 4th at 9 p.m. Eastern on CTV and CTV News Channel. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey there! Wasn't that great? Do you know where you can find some equally good content? Our YouTube page. It's filled with discussions, debates, and some laughs. Head there now, like and subscribe.